My name's Alex. I'm 31, single, and apparently invisible, at least to my own family. You wouldn't think so, considering I'm the one who helped pay off my parents' second mortgage, covered my sister's tuition shortfall, and lent my brother $5,000 2 years ago when his startup was tanking. He never paid me back, by the way, but I didn't mind. I've done okay for myself. Quiet job in software, decent apartment, nothing flashy. I've always been the reliable one. The guy who shows up, foots the bill, stays out of drama. I never expected to be celebrated, but I sure didn't expect to be dismissed either. So when my brother Ryan got engaged to Taylor, a girl who once described my job as adorably average, I kept my mouth shut. Not because I liked her, I didn't, but because Ryan seemed happy. And I figured, maybe if I played nice, she'd eventually stop treating me like I was part of the catering staff. I bought a suit, RSVP'd early, even offered to help out with last-minute wedding logistics. No reply. Not a thank you. Not a "we've got it handled," just silence. At the time, I chalked it up to wedding stress. The week before the wedding, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off the $2,000 check I'd written as my wedding gift. I handed it to my mom with a smile and a little card I'd written by hand. She barely glanced at it. "Taylor's parents are covering most of it," she said, waving vaguely at the dining room covered in RSVP cards and half-glued centerpieces. "They're a very involved family. Very organized." She said it like that was some kind of warning. I should have known better. That tone always meant stay in your lane. The night before the wedding, they had a rehearsal dinner. I wasn't invited. When I asked Ryan about it, he muttered something about keeping it small and mostly wedding party only. I laughed it off, even though my gut twisted a little. I reminded myself it was his wedding. Maybe I was being too sensitive. The day of the wedding, I arrived early, wearing the nicest suit I owned. I even brought a small camera to take casual photos. I was really trying to be supportive. The venue was stunning, I'll give them that. A lakeside lodge, sunlight bouncing off the water, strings of white lights hanging from oak beams. But the moment I walked in, I could tell something was off. The usher looked confused when I gave him my name. He flipped through the seating chart twice before he pointed, awkwardly, toward the far back corner of the reception hall. "You're at table 18, I think," he said, avoiding eye contact. I walked over, expecting maybe a quiet table for distant relatives or friends of friends. What I found instead was a rickety folding chair wedged behind a giant wooden column, half hidden from the rest of the room. The chair wobbled when I sat. And to my left, one of the DJ's massive speaker stands. It was like they found the one spot in the entire venue guaranteed to make you feel like an afterthought, and assigned it to me on purpose. I stood back up and double-checked the place card. My name, spelled correctly. No mistake. As I glanced around, I spotted some familiar faces. My cousin Josh and his fiancée had a prime table dead center. Ryan's old college roommate, who he hasn't spoken to in years, had a front row view. Even Mr. Benson, Ryan's high school chemistry lab partner, was seated next to the bride's aunt like he was royalty. I took a breath and walked up to the woman overseeing the seating. She wore a headset and carried a clipboard. Before I could speak, she pointed curtly. "Back there," she said, not even looking up. I said, "Actually, I'm just wondering if there's been a mix-up. I'm the groom's brother." That's when Taylor's mother, Madeline, walked by and actually stopped to chime in. She gave me a once-over, lips pursed like she'd tasted something sour. "Oh," she said sweetly. "That was Taylor's decision. She said you weren't really part of their side of the family. We wanted the close family up front." I stared at her. "I'm his brother." She shrugged, then added with a patronizing little smile, "But you're not in the wedding party, are you?" I didn't say anything. I just walked back to my chair and sat down, even though my legs were trembling with something halfway between disbelief and rage. I couldn't even see the head table from where I was. When the music started and everyone stood for the bride, I had to lean to the side of the column just to catch a glimpse. Nobody noticed me. Nobody cared. During dinner, no one sat at my table. Apparently, it had been reserved for overflow. The other chairs were empty. I spent an hour pretending to look at my phone, trying to keep my composure. But the boiling point hit during the toasts. Ryan's best man told a half-funny story about college. Taylor's sister gushed about how much Taylor had dreamed of this day since she was little. And then someone handed the mic to Taylor's father, who said, "We're so grateful to have every single person here with us tonight. Each and every guest here was chosen because you mean something deeply to Taylor and Ryan." That did it. I reached into my inside pocket and pulled out the card I'd written. I tucked the $2,000 check inside, no cash, just a paper check with a small note on the memo line that said, "For your future." I walked up toward the head table, toward the mic. I could see people glancing, confused. One of the groomsmen furrowed his brow as I approached. I didn't ask permission. I just took the mic. "Hi. Sorry to interrupt," I said. I smiled, but it felt tight. The room quieted. "I just wanted to say congrats to the happy couple. Truly, may your marriage last longer than my respect for you." And then, while the room held its collective breath, I reached over and plucked the envelope from the gift table. There was a small gasp from someone, I don't know who. Ryan's face turned white. Taylor blinked like I'd just spoken Latin. Madeline, across the room, looked ready to lunge at me. But I didn't wait. I set the mic gently back down. No dramatic drop, just enough to hear the soft thump, and walked straight out the door, past the DJ, past the caterers, past the valet trying to hand me a ticket stub. I didn't stop until I hit the parking lot. And that's where things really started to unravel. I didn't drive off right away. I just sat in my car, hands on the steering wheel, watching guests file out behind me like ants scrambling from a shaken hill. I can see faces peering through the windows of the lodge, murmurs rippling across the crowd like I just yanked the curtain down on a play and revealed the whole thing was fake. Good. Let them talk. Let them ask why the groom's brother just took back his check and walked out mid-toast. My phone buzzed. First it was Ryan. Just his name flashing across the screen. I didn't answer. Then came a barrage of texts. He texted, "What was that? You embarrassed me. In front of everyone. We need to talk. Now." Then Taylor chimed in, "That was classless. This is MY Day. You've always been jealous. I see it now. You owe Ryan an apology." I tossed my phone into the passenger seat like it was radioactive. I wasn't going to dignify any of that with a response, at least not yet. Later that night, I stayed in a hotel. Didn't want to go home. I needed distance. I didn't even sleep, just lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything. Thinking about how long I'd been treated like a placeholder in my own family. How many holidays I spent quietly helping behind the scenes while Ryan got all the attention. How every conversation with Taylor had felt like a performance where I was the janitor awkwardly walking through the middle of a ballroom. The next morning, I stopped by my apartment to shower and change. That's when the group text started blowing up. Apparently, word had gotten around. A few cousins texted me privately, saying they didn't know what happened, but they'd noticed how I was treated. Turns out several people had wanted to sit with me, but they were told my table was reserved. Reserved for what? Humiliation? Then I got a call from Mom. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message in her tight, "Don't you dare disobey me" tone. "Alex, I don't know what's gotten into you, but your little stunt ruined the reception. Ryan and Taylor are devastated. Call me back immediately." I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I took a walk around the city. Got a coffee. Sat by the river. Tried to remind myself that I wasn't crazy, that what happened wasn't just bad manners, it was a statement. A deliberate message. You're not one of us. It hurt more than I'd expected. And the worst part? I kept thinking about the little note I'd written in that card. It said, "Wishing you a love that lifts each other higher, the way families should." It suddenly felt like a punchline to a cruel joke. By that evening, things had shifted. I logged into Facebook, something I rarely do, and saw the first wave of wedding photos flooding in. Professional shots. Picture-perfect angles. Taylor's face plastered with that practiced pageant smile. Ryan grinning like he hadn't just watched his own brother walk out on him. But then, the comments. It started small. Someone asked, "Hey, where's Alex in all the group shots?" Then another, "Didn't Alex give a toast? I thought I saw him up there." And slowly, people began to notice. I didn't post anything. I didn't need to. The silence around my absence spoke louder than any caption could. That night, Ryan showed up at my apartment. I didn't answer the door right away. He knocked 3 times, then called out, "Come on, man. Please." I opened it a crack. He looked exhausted. Hair messy. Shirt wrinkled. Not the confident groom I'd seen yesterday. Just my brother, looking smaller somehow. "Can we talk?" he asked. I let him in. He sat on the edge of the couch like he didn't know if he was allowed to get comfortable. I stayed standing. "I didn't know they were going to seat you back there," he said. I stared. "You didn't notice your own brother wasn't at the front? At a table? Sitting alone behind a column?" He rubbed his face. I was focused on everything else. Taylor's family was in charge of the seating. Her mom's obsessed with controlling every detail. I didn't want to fight her on it. I raised my eyebrows. "So you just didn't fight at all?" He hesitated. "I thought you wouldn't care. You always say you don't like attention." I laughed. A bitter, ugly laugh. Yeah, I don't like attention. Doesn't mean I like being shoved behind the damn speaker like I'm an extra in your life. He winced. Okay, that's fair. There was a long silence. Then he added, Taylor thinks you owe her an apology. I just stared at him. He looked up slowly. I'm not saying I agree. I want things to go back to normal. I folded my arms. Normal is you taking and me being quiet about it. That's over. Another pause. Finally, he said, so what now? And that was the question, wasn't it? What now? After a lifetime of being the backup plan, the silent support, the forgotten brother who still showed up anyway. I hadn't decided yet. But one thing was for sure. I wasn't going back to the way things were. And Ryan knew it, too. Because as he stood to leave, he turned at the door and said, You really took the check? I met his eyes. Yeah, I did. His voice dropped. She's furious. Her mom, too. Good, I said. Maybe they'll remember that next time they treat someone like furniture. And with that, I shut the door. I didn't hear from Ryan for a few days after that. And honestly, I didn't expect to. The conversation ended with a kind of quiet finality, like we both realized we were standing on opposite ends of a bridge that had been slowly crumbling for years. And maybe I'd just been the first one to stop pretending it was still holding us up. But while Ryan kept his distance, Taylor and her mother, they went on a full-blown PR campaign. Suddenly, subtle little barbs started popping up on social media. Taylor posted a filtered wedding photo with the caption, So grateful for the people who actually support our love. Madeline followed up with one of her own. You can't choose your family, but thank God we chose ours. Comments rolled in, some sympathetic, some confused. A few people tagged me with, Where were you? Or, Did you leave early? But I didn't bite. Instead, I decided it was time to stop playing defense. See, here's the thing. I didn't want revenge just to hurt them. I wanted clarity. I wanted the whole family to see what had really happened. Because if I've learned anything, it's that silence protects the wrong people. So I made a decision. I was going to take back the narrative, and I knew exactly how. A week later, I sent out a message to our extended family group chat. You know, the one where birthday wishes get forgotten, but passive-aggressive memes from aunts never stop. I kept it short. Hey everyone. Just wanted to clear the air about the wedding before any more stories spread. I was invited. I showed up early, dressed up, and brought a $2,000 gift. I was seated behind a column, alone, next to the speakers. When I politely asked if there'd been a mistake, Taylor's mother told me I wasn't really part of their side of the family. So I left. With my gift. Just wanted you to hear it from me, not whispers. Then I attached a photo of my name card, table 18, crooked on the linen, next to the towering DJ rig. I didn't editorialize. Didn't get nasty. I let the facts speak for themselves. The fallout? Immediate. Within minutes, the chat exploded. Aunt Linda, what? I thought you weren't even invited. Uncle Dean, that's disgusting. You're his brother. My cousin Jenna jumped in with a screenshot of the empty table. Then another cousin dropped a bomb. She'd overheard Taylor at the bridal shower saying, We just need to keep his side low-key. They're not really photo material. Photo material. It was like someone lit a match in a room full of gasoline. People started calling Taylor out directly on her posts. Comment sections flooded with, Wait, is this about Alex? And why would you treat family like that? Taylor deleted 2 of her photos. Madeline's account went private, but it was too late. Then came the group message from my mom. Alex, that was incredibly disrespectful. We don't air family issues in public. I stared at it for a second before replying. Didn't seem to bother you when they humiliated me in front of 120 guests. She didn't reply, but other people did. Even some of Taylor's own relatives messaged me privately, saying they were horrified and had no idea I'd been treated that way. One of her cousins, someone I'd only met once, wrote, You were literally the only person who showed up early and helped set up chairs. This is insane. I hadn't even remembered doing that. I guess when you're used to being the helper, you don't clock it anymore. But now came the part one hadn't even planned for. Turns out, Taylor's dad, Jeff, was a part owner in a business where I'd recently been negotiating a freelance contract. Nothing major, just a side project. But when he found out I was the brother who stole the spotlight, he told his assistant to pause discussions immediately. I only found out because the assistant forwarded me the memo by mistake. The subject line? Do not move forward with Alex. Too much drama. That was it. I wasn't even surprised. Just disappointed. Not because of the job, but because I realized they weren't done trying to punish me for having boundaries. So I decided to burn the last remaining bridge. I still had the card. The check had long been voided, but the note inside, the one I wrote when I still thought this wedding would mean something, was still folded neatly in my desk. I took a photo of it. Then I wrote a new one. I didn't send it privately. I posted it publicly. Here's what I originally gave my brother and his wife. Before I was treated like a wedding crasher at my own family's table. Before I was told I wasn't really part of their side. Before I was called classless for walking away from a situation where I was clearly not wanted. I've spent years putting everyone else first. Paying bills. Showing up. Staying quiet. This time, I chose myself. If that makes me the villain in your love story, so be it. No hashtags. No names. But everyone knew. That post got more likes than anything I'd ever put online. Dozens of people reached out. Some apologizing. Some venting about their own family drama. Some just saying, "Thank you for standing up for yourself." And Ryan? He texted me that night. Just one line. "You really done with all of us?" And for the first time, I didn't hesitate. "No, Ryan. I'm just done being invisible." I haven't spoken to him since. But I heard from Jenna that the next family gathering, Easter brunch at our parents' place, was awkward. No Taylor. No Madeline. And apparently, Ryan looked like he hadn't slept in days. Meanwhile, I took that $2,000 and booked a solo trip to Japan. I hiked in Kyoto, ate sushi by myself, sat in silence at a temple, and finally felt peace. Japan was the best decision I ever made. I didn't just go to get away from my family. I went to remember what it felt like to exist outside of them. No passive-aggressive phone calls. No group chats filled with birthday messages to people who forgot mine. No guilt-tripping from people who only knew how to take, never give. Just me. In Kyoto, I wandered alleyways lined with wooden houses, their bamboo fences draped with moss. I drank matcha in the mornings and watched temple bells echo across stone courtyards. I hiked through the Fushimi Inari gates in complete silence, red arches stretching out like a spine into the mountain. And in that quiet, somewhere between breath and sweat and the scent of pine, something in me clicked back into place. I was no longer angry. I was just done. While I was away, I got only one message from my family. A group text from my mother with a blurry photo of my niece holding an Easter egg and the caption, "We missed you." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't love my niece, but because I knew what my mom really meant. We missed what you used to do for us. We missed the version of you that didn't fight back. The version that smiled politely when seated behind a column. The version that wrote generous checks with no expectations. The version they didn't have to consider because they assumed he'd always just be there. But that version of me was gone. When I came back from Japan, my apartment felt different. Like it actually belonged to me now. I started redecorating. Not out of boredom, but with intent. I threw away the worn-out couch that my parents gave me when I first moved out. "It's still good enough for you," my dad had said. I bought a new one. Midnight blue. Velvet. Dramatic. Pointless, maybe. But mine. Work picked up. I said yes to a few new projects. I reconnected with old friends I hadn't made time for in years. Turns out when you stop bending over backward for people who barely see you, you finally notice all the doors that were waiting to open. But, of course, nothing stays quiet forever. It started with my mom. She showed up unannounced one Saturday morning. I heard the knock and saw her through the peephole, standing there with a Tupperware of lemon bars like this was some sitcom scene. I didn't open the door. She knocked again, then tried the handle. "Alex," she called out. "Are you home?" I waited in silence. She stood there for another minute, then finally left the lemon bars on the welcome mat and walked away. I tossed them in the trash. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. Not a text. Not an email. An actual handwritten letter in my father's rigid cursive. "Son, your mother is very upset. We feel this rift has gone on long enough. You've made your point. Let's put this behind us. Ryan and Taylor are trying to move on, and you should too. No family is perfect. Let's have dinner next Sunday and talk this out. You're still our son. We still love you." That it should have made me feel something. It didn't. Because here's what that letter didn't say. "I'm sorry." Not once. No acknowledgement of what they let happen. No apology for dismissing me, for ignoring me, for watching me be treated like a stranger and deciding it wasn't their place to interfere. Just a gentle guilt trip wrapped in, "Let's move on," so they wouldn't have to deal with the truth. So I wrote back, "Dear Mom and Dad, I'm glad you love me. But love without respect is just possession. You raised me to believe in family, but somewhere along the way, that word started to mean the people you tolerate, no matter how they treat you. I don't agree. I showed up. I supported all of you for years. Quietly. Consistently. And when I asked for nothing, you assumed I needed nothing. But when I finally drew a line, you acted like I set the house on fire. You didn't miss me. You missed the version of me who didn't stand up for himself. That person is gone. I'm not coming to dinner. I'm not ready to pretend everything's okay just because it's convenient. If you ever want to have a real conversation with real accountability, I'll be here. But until then, please stop knocking on my door expecting the past to answer. Alex, I mailed it. No dramatic mic drop. No social media post. Just a quiet statement of truth, sent in the same envelope my father used to reach out. I don't know what they did after reading it. I don't know if they cried, or screamed, or tore it up. I just know they didn't reply. That silence? That was the loudest apology they could give me. As for Ryan and Taylor, a rumor had it things weren't exactly going great. Jenna told me Taylor had been pushing Ryan to cut ties with toxic influences, which, translated from Taylor speak, meant anyone who doesn't kiss her ring. Apparently, Ryan resisted. He's stubborn, but not blind. Maybe he finally saw what she was. The last time I saw him was by chance, at a cafe, mid-morning, both of us alone. We made eye contact. He nodded once. I nodded back. That was it. No words. Just two brothers, both changed, both pretending the weight between them was just air. But you know what? I was okay with that. Because for once, I wasn't looking for his approval. I had already given it to myself. And that might sound small. But when you've spent your life being told you're a side character in someone else's story, learning to be the main character in your own is the biggest plot twist there is. I'm not bitter. Not anymore. I'm building something new now. Something that doesn't require me to sacrifice dignity for inclusion. And if someday my family decides to knock on my door with more than lemon bars and hollow letters, if they come with real humility, real apology, real change, I'll listen. But until then, I'll be here. In my blue velvet couch. In my apartment that feels like peace. In my life that finally feels like mine.
Thank you for watching the entire video. If you like it, please subscribe to the channel.